It started with a vibration on her phone, a simple buzz against the countertop while she was in the shower. I wasn't snooping, wasn't even suspicious, just happened to glance at the screen as it lit up. A preview of a message. His name. The coach. One line. If you've ever uncovered betrayal not from a confession, but from a quiet message that changed everything, like, subscribe, and stay for more stories where truth hits harder than rage ever could. I can still smell you from yesterday. It took me a second to process it, longer than it should have. Not because I didn't understand, but because I didn't want to. This man coached our son's football team. He'd been in our home, shook my hand every Saturday, offered advice on drills and game schedules. My wife once called him a good guy who gets it. I guess he got more than just the team's respect. I didn't touch the phone again. I didn't march upstairs. I just sat down, alone, in a kitchen filled with the scent of her cooking, and stared at the morning sun as it poured through the window, heavy with the weight of something about to break. There's a particular kind of betrayal that feels like a splinter under your skin. Small, sharp, hidden just enough to make you question whether it's even real. I'd always assumed if something like this happened, it would come with screaming, maybe broken plates. But in reality, all it came with was a 4-second text and the sound of the water running overhead. I didn't confront her that morning. I didn't ask who he was talking about or what had happened. I didn't want her to lie before I had proof. Because deep down, I already knew. And something in me, a calm, centered version of myself I didn't know existed, decided I'd rather handle this like a man raising a son than a husband breaking down. So I started watching. Not her phone, her patterns. And it didn't take long to see the truth behind the uniforms and the weekend practice. Once you've seen the thread, it's impossible not to pull. That weekend, I stood on the sideline like I always did, arms crossed, watching our son run drills while my wife stood just 10 feet away, laughing a little too warmly at a comment from Coach. It was subtle. If I hadn't known what to look for, I might have missed it. But I did know. And what I saw was the performance of two people pretending there was nothing between them, while everything between them was already stained. After the game, I checked her messages. This time I wasn't ashamed of it. The texts were tucked under a fake contact name, one of her girlfriends. But the language didn't lie. She talked about missing his hands, about the adrenaline of sneaking around, and even had a laugh about how good it felt to feel wanted again. As if what we'd built over 10 years could be equated to a sweaty hour on a back seat with a whistle hanging from the rear view. I still didn't say anything. Instead, I printed everything. Screenshots, dates, photos they'd exchanged, cleverly cropped, but not cleverly enough. And one email, sent from her to him, that said, he suspects nothing. That was the one that hit the hardest. I wasn't angry because they'd fooled me. I was angry because they thought I was too simple, too trusting, too wrapped in fatherhood to see the damage being done right under my nose. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the garage, on a folding chair, staring at the toolbox I'd inherited from my father. I thought about legacy, about what it means to protect your kid, not just from injury, but from the illusion of loyalty. She came out to find me, asked if I was okay. I nodded. She kissed my head, and I let her. Because I needed time, not to forgive, but to plan how to leave without losing my son or myself in the process. I suggested therapy, not because I believed in saving us, but because I wanted to understand what kind of woman would bring that man into our home, our child's field, and still think she could call herself a mother. She agreed too quickly. She always did when she thought appearances mattered more than truth. That was her style. Damage control disguised as grace. The therapist, a middle-aged woman with quiet eyes, asked why we were there. My wife answered first. We've grown distant. I let her talk. Let her paint the picture of a tired marriage, a distracted husband, emotional neglect. Her voice was practiced, like she'd written the lines in her head for months. When she finished, the therapist turned to me. Do you feel distant too? No, I said. I feel disgusted. That was the first time she broke eye contact. I didn't yell. I didn't pull out the receipts. I didn't need to, not yet. but I watched the color drain from her face like ink in water. "We'll be honest in this room, right?" I asked. She nodded. So I said her name, said the coach's name, said the date of the first message I'd read, the timestamp on the photo she thought was cropped enough. I told them both what I saw, and then I sat back and let the weight of it settle between us. She cried. The therapist didn't blink. And I said one last thing before I stood up. If our son wasn't involved, I'd walk away without another word. But since he is, we're going to do this carefully. She reached for me. I stepped back. Because the one thing betrayal doesn't deserve is closeness, especially when the betrayer still shares your dinner table. After that, the sessions didn't last long. She kept trying to explain it, kept insisting it started emotionally, as if infidelity came with phases and disclaimers. She still coached on the sidelines of her own guilt, cheering, organizing snacks, taking photos like nothing had happened. But I wasn't watching the game anymore. I was building my exit plan. And this time, I'd make sure she couldn't edit the score. I hired an attorney the following week. Not out of rage, but clarity. I didn't want custody to become a battlefield, and I wasn't going to let my son grow up inside a lie polished for school drop-offs and PTA meetings. The lawyer asked me what I wanted. My answer was simple: everything but the performance. I asked for shared custody, not out of grace, out of strategy, because shared custody meant shared schedules, shared emails, shared visibility, and most importantly, it meant I could make sure she never spun this into something it wasn't, especially not to our son. I compiled my documentation, every message, every timestamp, not for court, though it would have held up, but for the people who needed to see it. Her family, our mutual friends, the team parents who trusted her to organize game day carpools and post photos like she wasn't sleeping with the coach. No public posts, no online callouts. I just told the truth, quietly, with evidence. One conversation at a time. Her parents were devastated. Her sister called to apologize on her behalf. A few of our friends stayed neutral, but most didn't. Because once people saw the timeline, the familiarity, the photos of Coach at birthday parties, they understood what had really happened. This wasn't an affair born of loneliness. It was built in broad daylight, crafted between Gatorade coolers and Friday night updates. She didn't just cheat on me. She involved the one adult in our son's life he was supposed to look up to. And I wasn't going to shield her from the consequences just because she wasn't sleeping with him anymore. The coach quietly resigned from the team 2 weeks after our custody agreement was signed. No press. No drama. Just gone. And she, well, she kept smiling like nothing happened. But the invitations dried up. The text chains moved on. The bleachers felt colder on her side. That was never my intention, but it was justice, all the same. It ended the way these things often do, not with a final confrontation, but with absence. The coach left town, quietly. His position was posted with no explanation, no thanks. Just a vacancy. Our son was placed on a different team the following season. He never asked why. I never made him choose sides. She tried to maintain normalcy, showed up to games, brought orange slices, smiled too much. But there's a way a community shifts when it knows. It doesn't shout. It just leaves you out. Texts you used to get, gone. Invites that used to be assumed, forgotten. And no one says why. Because they don't need to. I didn't gloat. I didn't campaign. I just refused to cover for her. That was my revenge. And it was enough. I gave her the same silence she once used to hide what she was doing behind my back. I let her feel it, to sit in the quiet, in the absence of benefit of the doubt, in the stillness of a story she couldn't rewrite. Because when you violate trust at the center of a family, you don't just lose your partner. You lose the respect that made people smile when you walked in the room. She never apologized. Not sincerely. She said she regretted how it happened. But regret without repair is just strategy, and I was done being her optics manager. Now, years later, our son is doing well. Strong. Grounded. He still plays ball, just not for anyone connected to that chapter. He doesn't know the full story yet. Maybe someday I'll tell him. Not to poison his memory, but to teach him what self-respect looks like when it's not loud, when it's not cruel, when it's simply a father who knew where the boundary had to be drawn. I lost a wife, but I kept my integrity, and I made sure the only person who walked away with a lie was the one who lived in it. If you've ever reclaimed your dignity without raising your voice, like, subscribe, and stay for more stories where silence speaks louder than betrayal ever could.